Imagine an animal so small it could sit comfortably in the palm of your hand. Now imagine that same animal throwing one of the fastest punches in the entire animal kingdom. So fast, the human eye can't even follow it. So powerful, it can shatter crab shells, smash clams open, and even crack aquarium glass. And the strangest part? Sometimes its prey dies without even being touched. Because when this creature strikes, the speed of the punch is so extreme that it briefly boils the water around it. The collapsing bubble that forms from that strike produces a shockwave, a second invisible punch, and even a tiny flash of light. For a split second, the temperature inside that bubble can reach thousands of degrees, comparable to the surface of the sun. And all of this power belongs to an animal about the size of a hot dog. This creature is called the mantis shrimp. At first glance, it doesn't look particularly threatening. In fact, it looks like a colorful shrimp you might see hiding in coral. But inside that small body is a weapon so advanced that engineers study it to design military armor and spacecraft materials. And scientists still struggle to fully understand how evolution managed to build something this extreme. Because the mantis shrimp doesn't just break the rules of the ocean, it pushes the limits of physics itself. But before we can understand how a tiny crustacean learned to punch like a bullet, we first need to understand something surprising. The mantis shrimp isn't actually a shrimp at all. Despite the name, mantis shrimp aren't actually shrimp. They're crustaceans, yes, but they belong to an entirely different order of animals called stomatopods, and they've been around for a very long time. Scientists believe mantis shrimp split from other crustaceans around 400 million years ago. That means their ancestors were already roaming ancient oceans long before the first dinosaurs ever appeared on land. Over that time, they survived multiple mass extinction events, including the catastrophic extinction at the end of the Permian period, often called the Great Dying, when nearly 90% of life in the ocean disappeared. Yet somehow, mantis shrimp endured. Today, there are hundreds of different species, living in warm oceans around the world. Some are only a few inches long, while others can grow nearly the length of a human forearm. Most spend their lives hiding inside small burrows in sand, coral, or rock. From the outside, those burrows look harmless, just another hole in the reef. But inside lives a hunter, with one of the most advanced weapon systems in the ocean. And mantis shrimp actually come in two very different types, each armed with a completely different strategy. The first type is called spearers. Spearers hide deep inside their burrows, waiting patiently for a fish or squid to swim too close. When the moment is right, they launch forward and strike with sharp, barbed appendages that act like tiny harpoons. The prey barely has time to react before it's dragged back into the burrow. But the second group of mantis shrimp is the one that made these animals famous. These are called smashers. And instead of stabbing their prey, they simply punch it. With incredible speed and force, smashers strike shells, crabs, and clams until the armor shatters apart. On a coral reef filled with animals protected by thick shells and hard exoskeletons, this strategy turned the mantis shrimp into something truly terrifying. Because in the underwater world, almost nothing punches like a mantis shrimp. But that raises an obvious question. How can such a small animal deliver a punch powerful enough to crack open armor? To understand that, we need to look at how fast that punch actually is. When a mantis shrimp decides to strike, the movement happens almost instantly. In fact, the punch is so fast that most cameras can't even capture it clearly, unless they are using high-speed slow motion. At full speed, the mantis shrimp's club accelerates to around 50 miles per hour in a fraction of a second. To put that into perspective, that level of acceleration is comparable to the speed of a small bullet leaving a gun. And remember, this is happening underwater. Water is nearly 800 times denser than air, which means moving anything quickly through it requires enormous force. Yet somehow, this tiny animal has evolved a weapon that cuts through water with incredible speed. When the mantis shrimp's club connects with its target, the force can exceed 1,500 newtons. Numbers like that don't mean much on their own, so here's a better comparison. A light punch from a human might produce around 100 newtons of force. An average adult punch might reach 300 to 400 newtons. Even professional fighters rarely exceed a few thousand newtons. But the mantis shrimp is delivering a massive amount of force from an animal that may only be 3 or 4 inches long. Imagine feeling the punch of a heavyweight boxer, but concentrated into a tiny point no larger than the tip of your finger. That's why the mantis shrimp can smash through crab shells, break clams open, and crack apart the armor that protects many reef animals. But the real secret behind the mantis shrimp's strike isn't just strength, it's speed. Because the faster something moves, the more destructive the impact becomes. And in the case of the mantis shrimp, the strike is so fast that something strange begins to happen to the water itself. Something that turns a simple punch into something closer to a tiny underwater explosion. When the mantis shrimp throws its punch, something incredible happens in the water around it. As the club accelerates forward, it moves so quickly that the pressure behind the strike suddenly drops. And when pressure drops fast enough in water, the liquid briefly vaporizes. In that instant, a tiny bubble forms in the wake of the punch. This bubble is called a cavitation bubble. For a moment, the water inside that bubble isn't liquid anymore, it becomes vapor. But the bubble doesn't last long. Almost immediately, the surrounding water rushes back in and the bubble collapses violently. And when it collapses, it releases a powerful shockwave. This means that when a mantis shrimp strikes its prey, there are actually two impacts happening. The first is the physical punch from the shrimp's club. The second is the collapsing cavitation bubble exploding just moments later. Sometimes, that second shockwave alone is enough to stun or kill the prey, even if the club barely touches it. But the weirdness doesn't stop there. When scientists studied these collapsing bubbles under high-speed cameras, they discovered something even more surprising. At the exact moment the bubble collapses, it produces a tiny flash of light, and the temperature inside that collapsing bubble briefly rises to thousands of degrees. For a split second, it can reach temperatures comparable to the surface of the sun, all created by the punch of a small crustacean hiding in a coral reef. In other words, the mantis shrimp doesn't just punch its prey, it literally detonates the water around it. But if the strike is powerful enough to create shockwaves and extreme temperatures, there's an obvious problem. According to physics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So when the mantis shrimp delivers that devastating punch, why doesn't its own arm shatter from the impact? If you punched a solid object with enough force to crack a crab shell, your hand would probably shatter instantly. Bones simply aren't built to absorb that kind of impact. So when scientists first studied the mantis shrimp's strike, they immediately wondered the same thing. How does this animal survive its own punch? According to Newton's third law, every action produces an equal and opposite reaction. If the mantis shrimp delivers a powerful blow, the same force should travel right back into its arm. Yet the mantis shrimp keeps striking again and again without breaking its weapon. The answer lies in the incredible structure of its striking club. Under a microscope, the club isn't solid like a hammer. Instead, it's made of layers of tough fibers called chitin, arranged in a complex spiral pattern. Each layer is slightly rotated compared to the one beneath it, forming a structure known as a helical or boulagon structure. Because of this design, when the club hits something and the impact force pushes back, the energy doesn't stay concentrated in one place. Instead, the force spreads out across many layers of the material. Think of it like a stack of flexible armor plates that distribute the shock instead of letting it crack the surface. This layered structure makes the mantis shrimp's club incredibly resistant to damage. In fact, scientists studying this natural design have begun to copy it in human technology. Engineers are researching similar layered structures to improve things like bulletproof armor, aircraft materials, and even spacecraft components. Nature, it seems, solved the problem of building an unbreakable hammer millions of years ago. But having a weapon that powerful is only useful if you can actually find your target. And this is where the mantis shrimp becomes even stranger, because its eyes might be some of the most advanced eyes in the entire animal kingdom. If you ever see a mantis shrimp up close, the first thing you'll probably notice isn't its claws, it's the eyes. They sit on long stalks, constantly moving, rotating, and scanning the environment in ways that almost look mechanical. Sometimes the shrimp will stop moving completely and just stare, slowly turning its eyes in different directions. At first glance, it looks strange, but what the mantis shrimp is doing in those moments is actually incredibly sophisticated. Inside each eye are specialized cells called photoreceptors, which allow animals to detect different types of light. Humans have 3 types of photoreceptors, which allow us to see the colors red, green, and blue. By combining signals from those 3 channels, our brains can interpret millions of colors. Mantis shrimp, however, operate on a completely different level. Depending on the species, they can have between 12 and 16 different photoreceptors. That means they can detect wavelengths of light that are completely invisible to us, including ultraviolet light. They can even detect something called polarized light, which most animals cannot see at all. Some mantis shrimp can also detect circularly polarized light, a rare visual ability that very few creatures on Earth possess. But the strangest part isn't just how many photoreceptors they have, it's how their eyes work. Each eye can move independently, scanning different parts of the environment at the same time. Even more impressive, each eye can judge depth on its own. Humans need two eyes working together to perceive depth. Mantis shrimp can do it with just one. This means they can track movement, judge distance, and scan their surroundings simultaneously. For animals trying to hide on a coral reef, that makes life very difficult. Camouflage becomes far less effective. Transparent animals can be detected. Even subtle changes in light patterns become visible. In other words, almost nothing can sneak up on a mantis shrimp. But having incredible eyes and a weapon that punches like a bullet still isn't the strangest thing about these animals. Because mantis shrimp also have something most crustaceans don't, a surprisingly advanced brain. Most crustaceans have relatively simple nervous systems. They react to threats, search for food, and follow basic instincts, but they usually don't display complex behavior. Mantis shrimp, however, appear to be different. Inside their small bodies is a brain structure that scientists rarely see in marine crustaceans. It's called a mushroom body. Mushroom bodies are specialized brain regions that help animals process sensory information, store memories, and make more complex decisions. They're commonly found in insects like bees and ants, where they help support behaviors such as navigation, learning, and problem-solving. Finding a similar structure in a mantis shrimp was surprising. It suggests these animals may have a much higher level of sensory processing than most other crustaceans. For example, mantis shrimp appear to remember the locations of their burrows and recognize the territories around them. After leaving their shelter to hunt, they can navigate back home using a method called path integration. This system works like an internal navigation map. As the mantis shrimp moves through its environment, it keeps track of every turn and distance traveled. By combining that information, it calculates the most direct route back to its burrow. Instead of retracing every step it took, the mantis shrimp can return home in a straight line. This type of navigation is commonly seen in desert ants and bees that travel long distances away from their nests, but it's much rarer in ocean animals. And this ability helps mantis shrimp survive in the chaotic and complex environment of a coral reef. But perhaps the most unexpected thing about mantis shrimp behavior isn't their intelligence, it's their relationships. Because despite their reputation as violent hunters, some mantis shrimp species form partnerships that last decades. When most people imagine mantis shrimp, they picture an aggressive predator smashing anything that moves. And that reputation isn't entirely wrong. Mantis shrimp are highly territorial, and they won't hesitate to attack animals that wander too close to their burrows. But in some species, scientists have observed something completely unexpected: long-term partnerships. Certain mantis shrimp form monogamous pairs, meaning they choose a single partner and stay with that partner for many years. In some cases, these partnerships have lasted up to 20 years. For an animal only a few inches long, that's an incredibly long relationship. Instead of living alone, these pairs share a burrow in the reef. They hunt in the same territory and defend their home together. When the female lays eggs, both parents help protect them. Sometimes the female stays deep inside the burrow, guarding the eggs, while the male patrols outside. Other times, they switch roles, taking turns watching over the nest. It's a surprisingly cooperative system for a creature known for delivering one of the most violent strikes in nature. In fact, some researchers say mantis shrimp pairs behave almost like married couples of the reef. They coordinate their movements, defend their territory, and tolerate each other in ways that most crustaceans simply don't. But life on a coral reef is rarely peaceful for long, because mantis shrimp are extremely protective of their burrows, and when two of these powerful animals compete for the same territory, the result can look like something out of a tiny underwater boxing match. But surprisingly, these fights don't usually end the way you might expect. Considering how powerful their punches are, you might expect fights between mantis shrimp to end quickly. After all, if one mantis shrimp can shatter a crab shell, it should be able to destroy another mantis shrimp just as easily. And mantis shrimp do fight. They are extremely territorial animals, and their burrows are valuable pieces of real estate on the reef. A good burrow offers protection from predators, a place to raise eggs, and a safe location to ambush prey. So when another mantis shrimp moves too close, a confrontation is almost inevitable. But if every fight ended with two animals striking each other at full force, the species probably wouldn't have survived for hundreds of millions of years. they would simply destroy each other. Instead, mantis shrimp have evolved a surprisingly controlled way of settling disputes. When two smashers face off, they often perform a ritualized display before the fight even begins. They spread their bodies, raise their weapons, and signal their strength to the opponent. If neither animal backs down, the fight enters a strange phase that scientists sometimes compare to a boxing match. One mantis shrimp curls its body and presents a heavily armored part of its tail called the telson. The telson acts like a shield. Then the opponent takes a full swing, striking the armored tail instead of the body. After absorbing the hit, the first shrimp may return the favor, delivering its own strike. Back and forth they go, trading blows against each other's shields. It's essentially a contest of endurance. Whichever shrimp realizes it can't handle the punishment eventually retreats, surrendering the territory. This ritualized combat allows mantis shrimp to settle conflicts without immediately killing one another. Because when you possess a weapon powerful enough to break shells, sometimes the smartest strategy is knowing when not to use it. And that balance between extreme power and controlled aggression may be one of the reasons mantis shrimp have survived in the oceans for hundreds of millions of years. But when you step back and look at the entire animal, the mantis shrimp becomes something even more remarkable, not just a strange crustacean, but one of the most extreme designs evolution has ever produced. When most people think of dangerous ocean animals, they imagine sharks, giant squid, or massive predators patrolling the deep, but the mantis shrimp proves something surprising. In the ocean, size isn't everything. Because inside a body only a few inches long, this small crustacean carries one of the most powerful biological weapons ever evolved. A punch fast enough to rival a bullet. A strike strong enough to crack open armored shells. A blow so powerful it can create shock waves, vaporize water, and briefly generate temperatures comparable to the surface of the sun. And that's only part of the story. The mantis shrimp also has one of the most complex visual systems in the animal kingdom, allowing it to detect types of light invisible to human eyes. It can remember its territory, navigate back to its burrow, and in some species, even form long-term partnerships that last decades. All of this is packed into an animal that many people would overlook as just another shrimp on the reef. But the deeper scientists study mantis shrimp, the clearer one thing becomes. Nature is capable of building creatures far more sophisticated than we often realize. Sometimes the most extraordinary animals aren't the largest or the most famous. Sometimes they're the small hunters hiding quietly inside coral reefs, waiting for the right moment to strike. And in the case of the mantis shrimp, that moment happens faster than the blink of an eye. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the ocean's most incredible creatures, make sure to subscribe and check out the next video where we explore another marine animal with abilities that seem almost impossible, because the ocean is still full of mysteries. And some of the strangest creatures on Earth are still hiding beneath the waves.